welcome to the next edition of our Foundation Speaker Series. I'm delighted to be speaking with Lindsay Young. Welcome, Lindsay.
Hi.
Lindsay Young is an integrity product manager for Facebook, where she builds products to keep people and experiences safe. She's personally passionate about making technology inclusive and meaningful for everyone. Prior to her time at Facebook, she spent several years working on map rendering technology in the geolocation industry. Now, Lindsay, can you just decode your title a little bit for us? What does a day in the life of an integrity product manager look like?
Yeah, for sure. So first, I think let's unpack what a product manager does, because honestly, until I almost had this job, I'd never even heard of that as a potential career option. So when you're building a product, a technology product, a hardware product, there's a lot of different people involved, right? You need a designer to think about how the experience will work and what it'll look like, how big the buttons will be. You need an engineer to think about how to build it in the most efficient way possible. You need researchers to research whether or not your solution is successful and effective. You might need data scientists to analyze usage or adoption. So there's all these different experts, right? And what a product manager does is two things. One, we are really responsible for setting the vision and strategy for what the product should be. So we really think about owning the people problem, owning the problem that this product is supposed to solve, and then working with all of those different experts and different functions to bring together a plan and execute it so that we can actually build that product. So that's what a PM, or product manager, does generally. What an integrity product manager does is we think about what happens when things don't go right in your experience. So if you encounter a person or a piece of content within the product that makes you uncomfortable, you might want to block that person or report that person. And so those are products, a reporting flow, a blocking system. And that's really what integrity PMs do. We think about what happens when things go wrong and what are the problems you might have and what are the products that you need to solve that in the moment. So my day-to-day is really diverse because I'm not only working still with a lot of those experts across research and design and engineering for integrity products, I'm also working with other product managers to make sure that the solutions they're building have the right integrity tools in place from day one.
Okay, wow, that's great. So as a product manager initially then, so basically you're synthesizing information and making decisions from all the different experts in their fields. And then you're looking at the big picture there. And then you're specifically in the integrity section of that product management.
Yeah, exactly.
So can you talk a little bit about how you got to where you are today? Like, what was your career path? How did you get to this point? Because you said you didn't even really know what a product manager was until you got into all this.
Yeah. And I actually, to be honest, I never expected to work in technology, right? So I did debate in high school, and I really loved politics and foreign affairs, international relations, and that's actually what I studied. So in college, I studied Middle East studies. I lived in Jordan for a while. I learned Arabic, and I was in Washington, D.C. This is absolutely what I want to do, 100%. And then while I was trying to find a job after college, a small startup, a tech firm in DC, was looking for someone that had project management, which is a lot of product management skills come in just general product or project management. Mm-hmm. And it looked interesting, and I'd never really thought about a career in technology. And I was working at a restaurant at the time and thought, why not, right? I might as well just go work here, get my foot in the door, see what it's about. And then I fell in love, not only with the idea of getting to work again with different people and in different experts in their fields to bring together a solution, but also working in technology broadly. Like if you'd asked me when I was in high school what I thought I would be doing at this point in my career, it absolutely would not have been living in the Bay Area, working in tech, or being at Facebook. And so I really stumbled in my way into it and just kind of followed different decisions and opportunities along the way that I thought were interesting. And that's how I got here.
Wow. Okay, that's great. So what do you enjoy most about your job then?
Yeah, the people, by far. I feel like there's a theme here of different experts in my field, but But every single day is different, right? And it's not just because we're talking about a lot of different aspects of bringing together a product solution and bringing it to market and ensuring it has value. But the challenges that you have every single day are different, right? No plan ever goes as expected. So some days I'm trying to figure out with engineering, like, we're behind schedule. Are there certain features that we could potentially scale back in order to meet our timelines, or working with design to give feedback on some of their early explorations for the solution, right? And so in getting to do that, I get to work with some of the greatest minds and most kind people in my career, and that is by far the best thing, not only about my job, but my current role that I have.
So with all that flexibility that you have to have in your job, do you have some kind of an overarching mindset for how you approach your work, like how you handle that kind of flexibility? What is your your modus operandi and how you approach that kind of thing?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we have a concept or a value at Facebook of ruthless prioritization, right? And so both in product management, but I think technology and honestly just a lot of jobs and careers, there is so much more work to do in a single day, or opportunity for what the work could be in a single day, than you have hours for. And so this idea of ruthless prioritization is every single day, I look at my schedule in the morning. I actually was doing it right before this conversation. I look at my calendar and I think about my top priorities or the things that I need to move forward that week. And I adjust and I assess. And sometimes an hour into my day, like I said, a problem will come up or someone will need to have a meeting with me. So I go back to my to-do list and I ruthlessly prioritize. And sometimes that's it's called ruthless because sometimes it's really, really hard to choose between what things you prioritize to get done that day and what things you have to put off or drop. And so the second aspect of this is expectation management. Because I am working so closely with so many other people who depend on me to deliver my part of the project, just like I'm depending on them, continuously managing expectations and over communicating and saying, hey, I have to drop this because this came up instead, or hey, I need to reprioritize. Would you recommend I do this thing for you or that thing for you? That constant communication is really important to making sure that I can get the work I need done and that my team has what they need to be successful.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. And so leading right into that, so when you say your team gets what they need to be successful, how do you then decide to define success each day? Since your priorities are constantly changing and you're kicking off one thing because you got something else that just came up, what then at the end of the day makes you feel like, okay, this was a successful day? Or, because I'm sure you don't want to go every night say, yeah, this just, you won't love your job if you feel like you've failed every single day, right?
Yeah. Exactly. I think a successful day is very different, right? And it depends on what project I'm working on or what my priorities are that day. So I think for me, I feel that I've had a successful day when I feel that I've made a meaningful progress in some capacity, right? Depending on the project I'm working on, that might be I've held a review and we've gotten alignment with a partner team and we're going to move forward and we have this plan and we're excited. Some days it is just getting my email inbox to zero. So it depends. And because there's so much ebbing and flowing of pace and progress, it's really important for me to track my success over time. So I actually, in my to-do list, one of the things that I track is what I would consider a win that week, my weekly wins, so that even if I have a day that's stressful or hard, or am in the last couple of days feel that I'm not getting momentum, I can look back over the last couple of weeks and say, oh wait, no, this is just recency bias. Like you've totally moved a ton this week or this month or this quarter. And it helps kind of reset my own expectations for myself beyond what's in my head in that moment.
So you have both your daily success things, but you have weekly success things so that you don't get too up and down from the days that are better than others and the days that are worse than others.
Exactly. Because I think we all have days that are hard or stressful and you're like, oh, I can't believe I'm failing. But then you look at the facts of the situation and you're like, wait, I'm doing okay.
Yeah, that kind of sometimes just even getting those 8 hours of sleep or 6 hours, whatever you could afford at the time, and then just waking up again. And it's like, today's a new day, new problems, new challenges, new successes. Here we come, right?
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, that's great. So, I don't know if you want to share this too much, but I got a question I want to ask you. And that is, what is one workplace career mistake that has taught you the biggest lesson? So now, I don't know how much you want to share and say, maybe coworkers, you can't watch this one. So let's go ahead.
Yeah, well, I'll take all the mistakes on my own shoulders. I think a mistake that I've made multiple times, and it's something that I've learned a lot about myself through, but I, to be honest, still struggle with. And I think that's important when you're assessing mistakes is this a one-time or this is a opportunity for growth? Is just thinking that I have to be the person to do it all, right? And it's not as simple as saying, am I good at delegating? It's more so feeling like if I am not involved in every aspect of the project, if I am not meeting deadlines that are unreasonable, or if I am not excelling in the way that I expected, because the workload is so big that I am failing, right? And so in both feelings, but also in actuality, like I've actually failed doing that. If you take on way too much, again, if you're not leaning on your team, if the situation is unreasonable or unsustainable and you're not notifying your leadership, right? You just think that you have to be the person to solve it all. It's going to fall apart eventually, or you're going to fall apart eventually because it's too much work. And so I think that is a mistake I made in very big ways on big projects early on in my career, and still in really small ways, I tend to fall into that trap of thinking you have to be the person that delivers everything, when in reality, I have to be the person to make sure that the work gets done and that it happens in a way that is sustainable and healthy for my peers, and meets the expectations of my leadership, but certainly not that I have to be the person to do it all.
So that's great. And you were talking about the success and how you have to, earlier you were talking about how you have to negotiate, as it were, with your projects. Like, I got something and it kicks something else off the list. So now I've got to communicate to my team members and, communicate in a nice way that their project can't get done the way they want it to because I've got competing priorities. So I'm sure sometimes comes with that some kind of criticism, rejection, or even just, like a boss saying, look, you really should have done this different ways, or different things like that. What are your strategies for handling criticism, rejection? What is your outlook for that kind of thing?
Yeah. Oh, I've struggled. Me and critical feedback, rejection, have had a very hard relationship over the years, I would say, because it sucks. It doesn't feel good to feel like you didn't do well, even if someone is giving you feedback that is truly intended to help you do better in the future, right? It always feels a little bit like heartache. So for me, I do kind of two or three things every time. One, as much as possible, I communicate how I prefer to receive feedback or criticism, which is in writing form. I am much better at ingesting the feelings of rejection and critical feedback if I'm doing so in writing, because usually my first reaction is no, like, oh, I'm bad, or oh, I didn't do that, or it's very defensive, right? And so I read it, and then I go and I take some space, think about, let it seep in, and then I go back and I read it again. And on the second reading, I'm a lot more able to get into this is feedback for me to do better headspace, like, oh, that actually is completely right, the way that this was communicated, or that mistake that I made. And then I let it sit a little bit, and I determine whether or not, like, those things that I'm getting feedback for, or the rejection that I got, means that I should make a change, or I shouldn't. Because sometimes critical feedback or criticism is helpful and it makes you better, and sometimes it doesn't. And so choosing what is most applicable for what you want is really important, and I definitely need to be in the right headspace to do that. So space and format are incredibly important for me.
Yeah. So what for you, the number one thing is is try to hold back any kind of, first gut reaction, first thing you hear, let it sit a little bit, let it stew, and then really evaluate it and take what you can and leave what you can't.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. And also, honestly, even if it's not criticism, sometimes you just get an email and you're like, what? And you just want to like fly off the keyboard, right? And I also take time. And then when you go back, you're like, okay, rereading that, this is fine. I just might be tired or hungry. Take some space and respond.
Yeah, that's great, Lindsay. That's great. That's great advice, and really appreciate you spending the time here with us to talk to us about these things, and of course, and working through real life issues that I'm laughing a little, and it's kind of because it's just so real. It's so true. We all have these moments. We get a little bit of an email, we get something, and it's important. Take that time, analyze what's said, don't fly off the handle, and it reminds you of those times when you get something, someone says something, and you can take it two different ways. And it's sometimes only on the second reflection that you realize, no, they didn't really mean it that bad way. They meant it in a better way. And of course, it helps to have that communication. Sounds like you really have a great job communicating with your team members to really get to know someone and what they mean by it when they say it.
Exactly. Because so much of work, I mean, it's just like your day-to-day relationships with your friends or your family or partners in life. Like, it's just about how to make sure that you're all moving forward in the best way possible towards a shared goal. And there's a lot of relationship maintenance that comes in that.
Yeah, that's great. Well, this is a great point to wrap up here, Lindsay. I really want to thank you for spending the time with us. Thank you for sharing us a little bit about your career. Thank you for telling us about what a product manager does, and then some of the more specifics there. And it was great. I'm sure our viewers will really enjoy this. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, that's great. And if you wish to get in touch with Lindsay, please check out the contact information that will be at the end of this video. And thanks for watching.